The Leafs versus Vegas game last night was chock full of drama, but what does it mean for those teams now? Plus, Zdeno Chara's big night in Boston. Plus, we're going to take a look at what the playoffs would look like if they started now. And of course, your big three games to watch this weekend, all on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone, and thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day and for making Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm here each and every Friday with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find the show on YouTube or anywhere you listen to podcasts to get our latest episode as soon as it's available. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Gil, how are we doing this Friday?
We're doing well. It's we're like right past the midway point of the season. We're starting to think trade deadline and playoff races, and it's an exciting time of year.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that last night's game between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Vegas Golden Knights was certainly one of the more exciting games and helped kind of lift that playoff atmosphere into place for the second half of the season that we always like to see.
Yeah, and it is always fun to see that. And look, you have all the ingredients. You have two really good teams. You have a little revenge game as Mitch Marner is going up against the Leafs for the first time since the trade. So, you had all the ingredients for some exciting hockey, and we certainly got it.
We did. Now, of course, like that disallowed goal at the end was a little crazy. And then the fact that Vegas was able to get it back again, Marner getting 2 assists in the game, didn't score. So it wasn't like the perfect cherry on top of the sundae, but I think it was everything but for him, I'm sure. And you got to think, like, just from a emotional standpoint, this was a very good lift for an already very strong and like firing on all cylinders Vegas Golden Knights team.
Yeah, and I mean, look, for Marner, sure, if he gets the game-winning overtime goal, that would be the storybook Hollywood ending. But 2 assists, your team wins in overtime.
Yeah,
I think the win is first. Getting on the score sheet is second as far as, a couple of points in the game. I don't think he needs to worry about not getting his revenge. I think he did just fine.
yeah, and of course, like Jack Eichel having a phenomenal game didn't hurt either. And that's the thing about the teams that are starting to like rise above, like Vegas is in some ways. They've obviously with goaltending struggles over the season, but Aiden Hill is back between the crease. I don't think it was his best effort. I'm gonna
But it
say
was enough.
it was enough. That's all you need is it was enough. And I think, as he gets more and more starts, he should get back into his rhythm, but hopefully he stays healthy for them. I think that's going to be a key moving forward.
No question. Look, you need your #1 goalie. You need him healthy. And, the season is long when you're as good of a team as the Vegas Golden Knights are. What you need is your goalie healthy and playing at his best come April and May, and for them possibly even June. So, let him work out all the kinks now and be ready for the big games when it counts.
Now, on the Maple Leafs side of things, unfortunately, we saw Nylander leave the game with an injury. And you have to think with this Toronto Maple Leafs team, trying to get back into kind of a smooth pattern of success here. They've had like some mixed results as of late, some really good games, some terrible games. And you do want to get into a pattern where you're firing on all cylinders heading into the playoffs, right? You want to peak at the right time. Like Nylander is a huge piece to potentially lose for any amount of time, especially in this gauntlet leading up to the Olympic break.
Yeah, and the Olympic break may actually we don't know the severity of the injury. All we know, and again, the NHL minimizes what we know. We know it's a lower body injury. But we also know that here's a guy who almost has an assist per game, 31 assists in 37 games this year, add 17 goals. He is a big part of the Leafs. And, he's been playing really well after coming back from a previous injury. And now he's out again. We don't know how long, but they can't afford to be without him for too long. And, maybe the Olympic break gives him a chance to recover if it is something that lasts that long. They can't afford to be without him right now.
Yeah, it is a huge, huge factor here for them, especially because they've seen the inconsistency with the other players in scoring, this season. They need everybody they can get in order to make things work here. But yeah, I do think if like this is the kind of hockey that we're gonna see in the playoffs, like I am here for it.
Oh yeah, it was a great game, very entertaining, and that's the high level hockey that you want to see as a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of at the other end of the spectrum in terms of looking at the retired players, we saw Zdeno Charra get his number raised to the rafters in Boston. And I always wonder, like, how you feel as an Islanders person about the career that Zdeno Charra wound up having with Boston.
Yeah, I mean, look, you just as an Islander fan slash person who covers them in the media, he's one of those guys who got away that the Islanders should have never dealt. First, went to Ottawa, then to Boston, but a richly deserved honor for Zdeno Chara. Captained that team to a Stanley Cup, played almost 1,700 regular season NHL games and 200 playoff games. And, the funny thing is, I met Zdeno Charra at the Nassau Coliseum. He was signing autographs when he was hurt early in his career. And, I mean, the guy is 6'9". I mean, it's just amazing how tall he is, what a big reach he had on the ice. But, those are tools. And then the question is, can you skate well enough? Can you play well enough? Can you use those tools? And Zdeno Chara certainly maximized the God-given talents that he has during his very, very lengthy NHL career.
Yeah, I think, obviously, as a not Boston fan, I think one of the highlights of watching Zdeno Chara play was how hard his shot was, right?
Yeah.
And we look forward to the All-Star. This was like when the All-Star game was at its peak, I would say, in terms of the skills competition and the hardest shot. And when he got that 108 mile an hour slap shot, like, I know he had a special stick for that game that you couldn't really use in competition because of the flex, but like still, I'll take it, right? It was super fun just watching like how hard could he shoot the puck. And you think about like leading up to every game you had to play against his team, mostly Boston, obviously, but
Right.
preparing to block shots that he may fire from the blue line. Like that was an intimidating thing. And every single defenseman on other teams would have to talk about it and have the bruises to show for it.
Yeah. And then it's just, the things he did that don't show up in a box score, the leadership he provided as a captain, and the great play he had in his own zone. I mean, as a defensive player, you try setting yourself up in front of the goal while a 6'9" guy is trying to move you away. It is not easy to establish position against Zdeno Chara. So he just did so many of the little things right. And then off the ice, he has always been known as a class act. And congratulations to Big Z for this well-deserved honor.
Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about it until I watched the ceremony. But looking at, the fact that he was number 33, because 3 had already been retired, and Larry Bird is also 33. So to have like 2 33s retired in the rafters in Boston. That's really cool
Little
and
symmetry,
pretty
right?
special. Yeah. Yeah, I really love that. I think it's just, you know, as a person who notoriously despises Boston sports, in every form and shape it takes, like, there's some times where you just gotta take a step back and be like, "Nah, this is really cool. This is, like, it's so cool that Boston has this and had Zdeno Charra there," because I think he was, like, definitely one of the few guys where you're like, "Oh, no, I love this guy. He's a Boston Bruin, but I love this guy."
And let's even say that is part of Zdeno
Yeah,
Chara's legacy, that he turned someone who hates all Boston sports
yeah.
into someone who respects what he did on the ice.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way around that, and you wouldn't want to because, again, he's such a great guy.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
love to see it. Really cool to see, like, his kids there and everything, so congratulations to him. Earlier, we were alluding to the playoff picture, and we're gonna take a look at what the matchups would look like now and what the biggest surprises are in terms of who's even there to begin with, coming up next. There is nothing like being near the ice during hockey season. The speed, the hits, the atmosphere, it is unmatched. And watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that used to get in the way was actually getting those tickets with the long queues, endless screens, prices changing at checkout. And that's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly easy to use for browsing, comparing, and buying tickets. It just takes minutes. One of my favorite features is seeing the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what you're going to get. And those zone deals come in clutch where you choose the section, Game Time will pick a seat for you. You can save even more. You can see NHL tickets available for as low as $25. It makes it easy to plan your game night. So take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NHL. That's Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen of the day, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. You can join the Everydayer Club today and get your favorite team show with no ad interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayerclub to learn more. All right, Gil. So I was taking a gander at the potential playoff matchups if they started today, and there is some craziness going on relative to what you might have thought at the beginning of the season. And obviously, we know there's a lot more hockey to play here. And with things being so tight in the standings, like, things are going to change. But it's a fun exercise to take a look at what these matchups would be and where some of the surprises here. And now, if you look at the East, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Boston Bruins, Carolina versus Buffalo, Detroit versus Montreal, and your New York Islanders versus the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I think obviously the biggest surprise in there is the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, I mean, they have played outstanding hockey as of late, even though their lengthy win streak is over. They still won 8 of their last 10, 2 in a row. And, can they sustain this throughout the second half of the season? We don't know. But, the other interesting thing when I look at the East, who's not in the playoffs as of right now? Toronto, Washington, Florida. Those are 3 teams that I think most people had in the playoffs on their bingo cards before the season started.
Yeah, I do love these particular matchups, though. I think they're a ton of fun. I think the Carolina Buffalo one is the only odd one out in terms of, like, how exciting would that be? But Lightning versus Boston, love it. Detroit versus Montreal, bloodbath, love it. Isles versus Pens, another bloodbath, love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there would be some great matchups. And, you got some real rivalry matchups in there. And, Detroit, Montreal, to me, two original 6 teams going at it. 1 point separating them in the standings right now. 2 teams that are, kind of on the rise, trying to get to that next level. It makes for very compelling hockey.
I mean, it's almost disappointing that both of them couldn't move forward in this scenario. Right? That it's only like only one of them gets to move on and prove that point directly that you were just making. I think both of these teams are very exciting and playing very fun hockey this season thus far, and very intriguing. And, Isles versus Pens, Metro Division rivalry there. I think, it's not one of the bigger talked about rivalries in the division, but it's there nonetheless.
Oh, there have been quite a few games over the years that have been interesting, let's say, between these two teams. And I'll say this, Sidney Crosby plays some of his best hockey against the Islanders.
Yeah. Sometimes I think it's against the Flyers, but I guess we all feel that way
It could be
when
both.
he's that good, right? But Crosby's playing out of his mind right now. It's just, it is a thing to behold, I gotta say. Looking out west, obviously some big surprises here in terms of who's in at the moment. The Colorado Avalanche, the juggernaut that it is, facing the upstart, surprising San Jose Sharks. I would love to watch this series. Like I think of course the Avalanche, I think, would win in maybe 5 games.
Yeah, that's where I would put it.
Right. But to see like Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith and these young, like really talented, hungry players, like go toe to toe with the Avs in a series, like I love that. I love that for the NHL, and I really hope it happens.
And you get some of the stars of the future, the people who are going to probably be the face of the game in the next, 5 years, 10 years. Going up against the team that is such a juggernaut like the Avalanche. And, the Sharks would be playing with house money. They would just be able to go out there, gain playoff experience. Anything they win is like if they win 2 games in that series, that's a bonus, right? I mean, so they would be footloose and be able to just let it all hang out. They have nothing to lose. I think it would be a very entertaining series, although, like you said, I think the Avalanche would be heavily favored.
Yeah, absolutely. The other 3 matchups out west would be Vegas versus Utah, Dallas versus Minnesota, and Edmonton versus Seattle. And I love the Vegas versus Utah matchup for geographic reasons. I think they're as close as you can get out west, where everything is very far apart. But I mean, obviously Southern California is a different story. But I've done the drive between Salt Lake and Las Vegas many times, and it's a fun drive out in the desert. And I love these 2 like desert teams going at it.
Yeah, that would be an interesting matchup, and Utah would be a big deal for them to get back into the postseason, And, having Seattle in there would be certainly refreshing, and that would be a big feather in the cap of rookie head coach for Seattle, Lane Lambert.
Yeah, and, obviously Edmonton to not play LA would be refreshing for them.
Yeah.
And I think given kind of the ups and downs of the season in Edmonton this year, for them to face a team like Seattle, I think would work to their advantage in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, Seattle doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. So, and I think you get to a point after 4 straight years where you're just saying, hey, at least it's not LA. We get to play somebody different in the first round of the playoffs. And the Kings are right now the next team on the outside looking in, only 2 points out of a spot. So they're not dead by any stretch of the imagination. And, I think based on preseason expectations, most people expected them to be there.
Yeah, it's a really interesting matchup. And, you look at the other one, Dallas versus Minnesota, that's just like a grudge match, right?
It's a grudge match. And again, right now, to have one of those teams out in the first round of the playoffs is just one of those unfair things that the way this playoff format is.
Don't love it. Don't love it.
Yeah, I don't love it either. So Because those are right now, two of the top 3 or 4 teams in the league, and to have them go head to head in the first round will make for some great hockey, but one of those teams is going to be very, very disappointed.
Yeah, yeah, and it's crazy because both of these teams have had a pretty successful season. Now, Dallas, I think, is one of those teams that's got something to prove in terms of its staying power. We talked about Detroit versus Montreal in terms of something to prove in terms of being upstarts, but Dallas is one of those teams that has had high expectations and has not, reached the pinnacle yet. And the Minnesota Wild, I think, we're always going to be good this season, but trading for Quinn Hughes and the moves they made have just taken them up a notch. And so for the Minnesota Wild to get in the way of Dallas, like finally getting over that hump, like that would be crazy.
Yeah, it would be. And again, most importantly, some outstanding hockey would be played in that series.
Yeah, love it. Love it. All right. Well, we'll continue to follow the potential playoff matchups as the second half of the season unfolds. In the meantime, we've got some games that are going to contribute to those standings that are looking to be fun to watch this weekend. We're going to talk about those coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The division round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you could apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day to see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Today's episode is also brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps put your listing. It makes it stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed.
We've got a big slate of games to take a look at this weekend. And tonight, the biggest matchup perhaps is the Florida Panthers visiting the Carolina Hurricanes. Always like a big in division, right? Or it's not in division. I'm going to start over.
Okay.
We've got a big slate of games to take a look at in the NHL this weekend. And starting off tonight, we've got the Florida Panthers facing the Carolina Hurricanes. And Carolina has been mostly steamrolling through, but when they lose, sometimes they lose pretty badly. Florida has been trying to claw their way back into a playoff position. They were there briefly. They're not anymore. Huge implications for Florida, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're 5 points out of a playoff spot with 3 games in hand, so on Boston. So they're still in the thick of it, but there isn't a lot of margin for error right now for the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. It would be ironic if their quest to win 3 straight Stanley Cups ends before the playoffs even begin. And Carolina is one of those teams that is so steady. And consistent overall. It's going to make for a very compelling game.
Yeah, I think so as well. And, obviously, Carolina is trying to stay above the fray in the rest of the Metro division. So I think that is kind of what the incentive is here for them. But, they're 5-4-1 in their last 10. So not like completely up to the level that they're used to. So being able to kind of squash the Panthers like a bug a little bit would be very helpful for them for a momentum reason. Turning our attention to the Saturday slate of games, we just talked about these potential playoff matchups, and both of these teams are currently in the playoff picture. The Minnesota Wild facing the upstart Buffalo Sabres. And this is kind of like a gut check game for me, right? Where you're like, okay, Sabres, like, who are we? Like, who are we really going up the dominant Minnesota Wild?
Yeah, this is a test that I think, look, teams go on hot streaks, but the old cliche is you're never as good as you look when you're on a winning streak, and you're never as bad as you look during a losing streak. So, Buffalo still riding the hot hand, even though the 11-game winning streak ended. So they're 8-2 in their last 10, winners of their last 2. But are they for real? And I think going up against the Minnesota Wild will give them a real litmus test as to whether or not they're for real. And from a Minnesota perspective, they've quietly lost 3 in a row. They need to get back on track.
Exactly. I think it's hugely important for Minnesota to be like, no, like, this is a team we should beat and we will beat them, right? I think that is going to be the key here for the Wild to make sure that they maintain their position in the division in that top 3, right? Because once you get into wild card territory for the Wild, I think it gets a little dangerous for them. And so they have to win this game, I would think.
Yeah, there's a little bit of pressure on there. No question about that. And, they still have a 9-point lead over Utah for third place in the Central Division. But at the same time, it also, they're only 2 points behind Dallas for second place. They don't want to fall behind there either.
Right. Exactly. We should also mention that on Friday and Saturday, there is a Kings Ducks back-to-back, which is always a good time. Despite the Ducks kind of falling off a little bit, the Kings are not what they were last year, but it's still a great rivalry. And so if you're into the home and home back-to-back thing, that is a fun series of games to watch. But on Sunday, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning facing the Dallas Stars. And, I feel like this matchup is in a similar situation to that Panthers Canes matchup in the sense that both teams have a lot at stake to prove that they are the cream of the crop here. Like, the Lightning are the cream of the crop in the East, but can they match up against that Western Conference team?
Yeah, and Tampa Bay right now, winners of 11 in a row, the hottest team in the NHL. Dallas kind of struggling a little bit lately, only 2-5-3 in their last 10, losers of 2 in a row. They're battling Minnesota for second place and home ice advantage in that opening playoff round. They need to get back on track. And Tampa Bay, they have the number 1 record in the East by 1 point. So, Detroit and Carolina are right behind them. No margin for error here. And the other interesting thing is this: Tampa Bay going into Dallas. Tampa Bay is much better on the road so far this year than they are at home.
Yeah. I mean, that is like just something very unexpected. So I think that these matchups that we've just talked about are like pretty important games this weekend to watch, to give you kind of a harbinger of what's ahead for the weeks to come. And we will talk about what happened in the week that was next Friday when we return on Locked On NHL's Friday show. Gil will be back on Monday to talk to hosts from around the Locked On NHL channel about what's going on with their teams. And if you want to get Locked On NHL ad-free, join our Every Dayer Club, where you get ad-free episodes of your favorite team's show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be found through lockedonpodcast.com/everydayerclub. Have a great weekend, everyone.